Imagine a man who never killed with his own hands, yet controlled others so completely they murdered for him. A failed musician, a drifter, a manipulator who convinced young minds that the end of the world was near, and that only he held the key to survival. This is not just a story about murders. This is about power, fear, and the dangerous charm of Charles Manson, a name that still haunts America, the late 1960s, a time of change in America. The Vietnam War raged overseas, civil rights protests filled the streets, and a cultural revolution was rewriting what freedom meant. Young people were leaving home, seeking peace, love, and belonging. But in the cracks of this idealistic dream, predators were waiting. And among them stood Charles Manson. Manson wasn't the tall, strong figure of a traditional cult leader. He was small, unassuming, with piercing eyes and an unsettling smile. But behind those eyes lived a man who had spent most of his life in prison, learning how to manipulate, how to survive, and how to control others. He had failed as a musician in Los Angeles. Record labels ignored him, producers dismissed him, and resentment grew inside him like fire. But while his music failed to win him fame, his words, his twisted philosophy, won him followers. He called them his family, and they came willingly. Runaways, young women searching for love, men looking for guidance, all found themselves under Manson's spell. At his Spawn ranch compound in California, he promised them freedom, peace, and a higher purpose. But what he really gave them was fear, drugs, and manipulation. But the question still stands. How did this failed musician turn into the mastermind behind one of America's most brutal killing sprees? The story begins with a prophecy. Manson preached an apocalyptic vision he called Helter Skelter, borrowed from a Beatles song. He claimed a race war was coming, society would collapse, and when it did, he and his family would rise from the shadows to rule the world. It sounded insane, and it was. But to his followers, broken and searching for meaning, Manson's words sounded like truth. They believed him. They obeyed him. And soon they would kill for him. August 8th, 1969, Los Angeles, a quiet night in the Benedict Canyon Hills. The home at 10,050 Cielo Drive glowed softly under the moonlight. Inside, actress Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, relaxed with friends. She had no idea that shadows were moving closer, climbing the hill, slipping through the darkness. Manson himself wasn't there. He didn't need to be. He had already given the order. 4 of his family members, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, were on their way to carry out his command. What followed was one of the most gruesome nights in American history. The family broke into the house. Within hours, 5 people were dead: Sharon Tate, her unborn child, and her friends. The walls were smeared with blood. The word pig was written across the front door. It was chaos. It was horror. It was exactly what Manson wanted, but it wasn't over. The very next night, Manson ordered his followers out again, this time to the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. They were tied up, tortured, stabbed. Again, words written in blood on the walls. The murders shocked Los Angeles. Hollywood was terrified. Who could commit such random, brutal crimes? For months, the police were clueless. The city lived in fear. And Manson sat back and smiled. but his arrogance would be his undoing. The investigation soon unraveled his so-called family. Susan Atkins bragged about the murders to cellmates. Linda Kasabian testified against the others. The pieces fell into place. And when the truth was revealed, the nation couldn't believe it. Charles Manson, this scruffy drifter with a guitar and wild eyes, had ordered it all. The trial that followed became a media circus. Manson carved an X into his forehead, later turning it into a swastika. He ranted in court, controlled his followers even from behind bars, and turned the proceedings into a dark theater of chaos. The jury saw through it. Manson and several of his family members were sentenced to death, later reduced to life imprisonment when California outlawed the death penalty. But even behind bars, Manson remained a symbol of evil. Interviews with him showed a man grinning, laughing, rambling about chaos and control. His eyes burned with the same unsettling power that had once convinced others to kill. The murders ended in 1969. But the fear never did. Charles Manson became more than a man. He became a myth, a warning, a reminder of how dangerous blind devotion can be. And perhaps that's why his story still haunts us. Because Manson himself never stabbed Sharon Tate. He never killed Leno or Rosemary LeBianca. His hands weren't bloody, but his words were sharper than any knife. He proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is influence. This is the story of Charles Manson, the man who killed without killing.